In the quiet suburbs of Texas, the Miller family seemed like the kind of neighbors everyone admired. John Miller, a 38-year-old lawyer, carried the charm of a man determined to rise above his modest beginnings. His wife Grace was a devoted nurse, kind-hearted yet ambitious, balancing long shifts at the hospital with her duties at home. And then there was Emily, their 9-year-old daughter, full of laughter, crayons, and stories that seemed to color the world brighter every time she picked up a pencil. Their home was not extravagant, just a simple 2-story house with peeling paint on the porch, but inside, it was filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of Grace's cooking. At dinner, John would tease Grace about her obsession with organizing everything, while Grace would laugh at John's hopeless attempts at cooking on weekends. Emily, caught between their jokes, would clap her hands and beam, the happiest child in the neighborhood. But beneath this picture of harmony, subtle cracks had already begun to form. John was not satisfied with just enough. He wanted more, a bigger house, a stronger reputation, a legacy that his daughter would be proud of. Grace, though supportive, longed for his presence more than his promotions. Nights grew longer at the law firm for John, and at the hospital for Grace. And while the couple believed they were doing everything for Emily's future, Emily only saw empty chairs at the dinner table, missed birthdays, and bedtime stories told by no one but herself. She began sketching things, sometimes a happy home, but other times houses split in two, shadows replacing sunlight. At first, these sketches seemed like innocent drawings of a child's imagination, but soon, they became quiet cries no one paid attention to. As months passed, the distance between John and Grace grew sharper. John's eyes began to look past Grace at the dinner table, his thoughts tangled in deadlines and late-night meetings. Grace's patience began to wear thin. She too was exhausted after 12-hour shifts, her heart heavy from saving strangers while failing to save her own family. Arguments started small, about groceries forgotten, laundry undone, Emily's school project missed. But like cracks in glass, the arguments spread, turning into nights filled with silence so heavy that even Emily stopped asking questions. One night, rain pattered against the windows as John returned late from the office, his tie loosened, his face pale with stress. Grace, waiting in the living room with her arms crossed, broke the silence. "Do you even know Emily had her art competition today?" Her voice was sharp, almost trembling. John froze, realizing he had forgotten yet again. Emily had waited at school, clutching her sketchbook, searching for her father's familiar face in the crowd, but he never came. Grace's eyes filled with disappointment. "She needed you, John, but you weren't there." John's voice rose defensively. "I'm doing this for her, for you. Do you think I want to work myself to death?" Grace snapped back. "She doesn't need a rich father. John, she needs a present one." Their voices collided like thunder, and Emily, hiding behind the hallway wall, clutched her sketchbook to her chest, tears streaming down her small face. In her drawings that night, she didn't draw houses or flowers. She drew herself standing alone in the rain. The following weeks only grew worse. John buried himself in work, chasing promotions as if they could fill the emptiness inside his home. Grace withdrew into herself, questioning whether love could survive so much neglect. Emily's teachers began to notice her silence, her once bright colors turning darker, her smile fading. One Friday evening, Emily overheard her parents arguing about separation. Grace, her voice breaking, whispered, "Maybe it's better if we go our own ways. Maybe Emily will be happier without all this fighting." John didn't reply, but the silence spoke volumes. For Emily, those words felt like the ground crumbling beneath her. The house that once smelled of dinners and laughter now smelled of distance and resentment. Suspense hung in the air every night. Would they finally split? Would the home shatter completely? Then came the night everything changed. It was raining heavily in Texas, the kind of storm that makes the world feel unforgiving. Emily, after another night of hearing her parents argue, decided to take her bicycle and ride down the street to clear her mind. She didn't tell anyone. She just slipped out, clutching her raincoat tightly around her small body. The storm blurred the streetlights, the roads glistening with danger. She pedaled fast, tears mixing with raindrops, her little heart pounding with confusion. At the same time, John and Grace were still inside the house, voices raised, neither realizing their daughter had vanished into the storm. It wasn't until the phone rang, a stranger's trembling voice explaining there had been an accident on Elm Street, that their world stopped. John's briefcase slipped from his hands. Grace's breath caught in her throat. In the pouring rain, Emily's bicycle lay twisted under the glow of headlights. Her small body rushed to the hospital. The sterile white corridors of the emergency ward smelled of antiseptic and fear. John and Grace sat side by side, their hands trembling, their anger drowned by terror. Every second stretched into eternity as doctors rushed in and out of Emily's room. John buried his face in his palms, whispering prayers he hadn't spoken in years. Grace, her eyes swollen from crying, finally leaned against him. "What have we done, John? We were so busy fighting. We forgot her." John's hand found hers, gripping it tightly, and for the first time in months, they didn't pull away. Hours passed like shadows. Finally, the doctor emerged, his expression tired but hopeful. "She's stable now. She'll need rest, but she's a strong little girl." Relief crashed over them like a wave, and for the first time in months, John and Grace held each other, their tears soaking into each other's shoulders. Inside the hospital room, Emily lay pale but safe, her small hands clutching her sketchbook even in sleep. On the first page was a picture, a family of 3 standing together under a bright sun. Grace stroked Emily's hair, whispering, "We're here now, sweetheart. We won't leave you again." John knelt beside the bed, guilt etched into every line of his face. "I promise you, Emily, no more missed moments. No more empty chairs." The silence of the room was no longer heavy, it was healing. The family, once broken by ambition and distance, found its way back through fear, through love, through the realization that money, promotions, and pride were nothing compared to the warmth of a child's smile. In the days that followed, John cut back his hours at the firm, learning to be present at home. Grace rearranged her shifts, choosing dinners together over overtime. And Emily, slowly recovering, began to draw in colors again. Bright yellows, deep blues, vivid reds. Her sketches no longer carried shadows of broken homes. They carried hope, unity, and sunlight. Neighbors saw the Millers differently now, not as the perfect family, but as the family who had broken, stumbled, and found their way back. And perhaps that made them even stronger. Life wasn't perfect. Arguments still happened, bills still piled up. But at the dinner table, chairs were no longer empty. At bedtime, Emily's laughter returned as her parents tucked her in together. And when John looked at Grace now, he didn't see someone holding him back. He saw the woman who had stood beside him through storms, and he realized she was his true success. Grace saw not a man lost in ambition, but the husband who chose love over legacy. And Emily, their little bridge of hope, finally had what she had wanted all along. Not wealth, not a bigger house, not new toys, but simply her family together. The accident that could have destroyed them had instead saved them, teaching them the hardest but truest lesson. That family is the only treasure that cannot be replaced. And so, in that small suburban house in Texas, where laughter had once been lost, it bloomed again, brighter than ever. Because sometimes it takes the darkest storms to bring out the light we had forgotten. The weeks after Emily's accident brought a strange kind of peace to the Miller household. John had become a softer man, less concerned with late-night cases and more focused on making breakfast before Emily woke up. Grace found herself smiling more often, her once tired face glowing when she caught John reading to Emily, or when she walked into the kitchen and saw them both laughing over pancakes that always turned out lopsided. But healing is never a straight path. Sometimes shadows linger long after the storm has passed. Emily's physical recovery was steady, scrapes healing, bruises fading, but her spirit carried scars invisible to everyone except her. She would wake up in the middle of the night sweating, whispering that she heard the sound of screeching tires. Her crayons, once full of bright yellows and greens, still occasionally slipped into blacks and grays, and though she smiled more often than before, there was still a quiet sadness in her eyes, a fear that one day her parents' hands would slip apart again. Grace noticed it first. "She's scared," she told John one evening after Emily had gone to bed. John, who had been fixing a loose chair in the kitchen, sighed. "I know, I can see it too. She doesn't trust that this us will last." Grace's eyes welled up. And why would she? "We almost tore this family apart." John set the chair down, crossing the room to take her hand. "But we didn't, Grace. We're here. That's what matters now." Grace nodded. But deep inside, she feared that Emily's wounds were deeper than either of them could heal on their own. 2 months later, The Millers received a letter that would test their newfound unity. It came in a crisp white envelope with the seal of John's law firm. Inside was an invitation, a recognition ceremony for John, who had been selected as one of the state's top 40 lawyers under 40. It was the honor he had once dreamed of, the kind of event that could open doors to a partnership. John stared at it for a long time before placing it on the table. Grace raised her eyebrows. "You should go," she said softly. "I don't know," John admitted. "It's in Dallas overnight. I'd have to prepare speeches, meet clients, and you're worried it'll pull you back into the old life," Grace finished for him. John nodded. "I promised Emily, I promised you. I don't want to lose us again." Grace placed her hand over his. "Maybe this isn't about losing us. Maybe it's about proving you can balance both. You can't run from your career, John. It's part of who you are. You just need to choose us too." John exhaled. "Then we all go together." When Emily overheard, her face lit up. "A trip, like a real trip? With both of you?" Her excitement sealed the decision. The Millers packed their bags and drove the 4 hours to Dallas. Emily sat in the back seat, humming tunes and sketching the passing scenery. Sketches that for once carried blues of open skies instead of storms. But as the city skyline came into view, Emily grew quiet. The skyscrapers loomed over them, cold and distant. She reached forward and tugged at Grace's sleeve. "Mom, do people in cities fight more?" Grace turned, puzzled. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Emily's voice dropped. "It just feels like big buildings mean big secrets. Like people forget about their families." John's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Grace placed a calming hand on his arm before answering. "Not everyone, Emily. Some people forget, yes. But some remember even stronger. Like us, right?" Emily's eyes searched their faces before she gave a small nod. "Right." But the unease in her voice lingered. The night of the event, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers, polished marble, and people in suits worth more than the Miller's car. John stood tall in his tuxedo, Grace radiant in a navy gown, and Emily looking like a doll in her little white dress. But while John mingled with colleagues, Grace noticed Emily's shoulders stiffen. The little girl clung to her mother's hand, eyes darting around the room as if it were filled with ghosts. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Grace whispered. Emily bit her lip. Everyone's smiling, but it feels fake, like they're wearing masks. Grace's heart tightened. "You're very smart, Emily, but not everyone's fake. Some people are just nervous like your dad is." Emily glanced at John, who was laughing with a group of men. For a moment, her expression softened, but then it hardened again. That night, after John gave his speech, eloquent, humble, and full of promises, Grace found Emily outside on the balcony, staring down at the streetlights. "Are you okay, baby?" Emily's little voice trembled. "What if Dad gets busy again? What if we go back to how it was? I don't want the accident to be the only reason you stayed together." Grace knelt, holding her daughter's hands. "Emily, listen to me. Families make mistakes. We did, but we also learned. Your dad and I aren't perfect, but we're trying every single day. And you're our heart. We won't forget that again." Emily didn't answer right away, but when John joined them, wrapping both of them in his arms, she finally whispered, "Okay, I'll try to believe that." The next morning, as they prepared to leave Dallas, John stopped to grab coffee in the hotel lobby. That's when he noticed a man watching him from across the room. The man was sharp, with dark eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach them. "John Miller?" the stranger said, stepping closer. "Yes," John replied cautiously. "I've heard about you. Impressive speech last night. My name's Daniel Cross. I represent a firm in Houston. We're expanding, and we could use someone with your ambition." John stiffened. "I'm not looking for new opportunities." Daniel's grin widened. "Not even for double the pay, prestige? A chance to argue cases that will make headlines?" John shook his head. "I've made my choice. My family comes first." Daniel leaned in, lowering his voice. "Careful, Miller. Opportunities like this don't knock twice. And sometimes if you don't open the door, they kick it down." With that, he walked away, leaving John unsettled. Grace noticed his silence in the car. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." John lied, but his knuckles were white against the steering wheel. And Emily, watching from the backseat, sketched the stranger's sharp smile in her notebook. Back in Texas, life returned to a fragile normal. John spent evenings helping Emily with homework. Grace planned small family outings, and for a while, peace returned. But Daniel Cross's words haunted John. Sometimes, he caught himself daydreaming about the life he once chased: partnerships, wealth, recognition. And though he shook the thoughts away, Emily sensed it. She always sensed it. One night, Emily slipped a drawing under his office door. It showed a man standing between two houses, one warm with light and family inside, the other tall and cold, made of glass and money. The man was split in two. John sat staring at it for hours, realizing Emily had drawn him. Then came the day that tore the fragile piece apart again. It was a Saturday. Grace was at the hospital for an emergency shift. John was in his office reviewing old case files, and Emily had been playing in the backyard. At least that's what John thought, until the silence grew too long. When he stepped outside, the yard was empty. Emily's sketchbook lay open on the grass, a page half finished, a drawing of the stranger. Daniel Cross. Panic surged through John. He called her name, searched the neighborhood, but there was no sign of her. When Grace returned home and saw the police cars, her scream echoed through the night. The Millers' greatest fear had come true. Emily was gone. The flashing red and blue lights painted the quiet suburban street in chaos. Neighbors stood on porches whispering, their faces pale with fear and pity. Grace was on her knees in the driveway, clutching Emily's sketchbook as if it were a lifeline, her sobs breaking through the humid night air. John stood frozen, surrounded by officers asking questions he could barely process. When was the last time you saw her? How long was she outside? Any known enemies, Mr. Miller? John's voice cracked. She was just in the yard. I thought she was drawing. I didn't hear anything. Grace lifted her tear-streaked face, her voice trembling with rage. You didn't hear our daughter vanish, John? The words pierced him, sharper than any courtroom argument he had ever lost. His eyes fell to the sketchbook in Grace's hands. The half-finished drawing chilled him. It wasn't just Daniel Cross's face. Behind the man, Emily had drawn bars, a cage. Detectives arrived quickly, their questions clinical, their presence heavy. Could this Daniel Cross have anything against you? One asked. John hesitated. He hadn't told Grace the details of his encounter with Cross in Dallas, not wanting to worry her. But now, Emily was gone. There's a man, John admitted. Daniel Cross. He approached me at an event. Tried to lure me to his firm. When I said no, he threatened me. Said opportunities kick the door down if you don't open it. The detective scribbled notes, frowning. You think he'd go after your daughter? John swallowed hard. He looked like the kind of man who gets what he wants. At any cost, Grace's grip on the sketchbook tightened. You should have told me, she whispered. I didn't think. No, she snapped, her eyes blazing. You never think when it comes to us, the officer interrupted gently. We'll put out an Amber Alert immediately. But Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller, you need to be prepared. The first 24 hours are critical. The words sent a dagger of terror through both of them. At 3 a.m., the house phone rang. Grace lunged for it, her voice trembling. Hello, Emily? A slow, mocking voice answered. Mrs. Miller, tell your husband he should have taken my offer. Grace's blood froze. Daniel Cross. John grabbed the phone, his voice low and dangerous. If you've touched her, she's alive, Daniel interrupted smoothly. For now. But you need to make a choice, Miller. Sign with my firm in Houston. Walk away from your old life, or you'll never see Emily again. John's heart pounded. You're insane. Insane? Daniel chuckled. No, ambitious, the kind of ambition you once had. You buried it for your family. But I can dig it back up. Think carefully, John. Because the clock is ticking, the line went dead. Grace turned to John, horror etched across her face. He took her. To punish you? John's chest heaved. No, to own me. The FBI became involved. Phone lines were tapped, Cross's known associates tracked. But the man was careful. He had resources, money, shadows that swallowed trails whole. Grace could barely function, her body moving but her spirit collapsing. She clutched Emily's drawings at night, whispering prayers. John, meanwhile, transformed. The fear in him hardened into steel. He refused to sit idle while his daughter was in the hands of a madman. One night, he confessed to Grace what he had decided. I'm going to him. Grace's eyes widened. No, John, that's what he wants. He won't let her go otherwise. He's using me as leverage. I can't gamble Emily's life. Grace grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his skin. And if he kills you both? What then? John cupped her face, his own breaking with desperation. Then at least she'll know I fought for her. Grace sobbed, collapsing against him. "I can't lose you both." Meanwhile, Emily awoke in a dimly lit room. The walls were concrete, the windows barred. Her small body trembled under a scratchy blanket. A tall man entered, the same sharp eyes, the same cold smile. "Hello, Emily." She shrank back. "Where's my mom? Where's my dad?" Daniel crouched to her level, his voice smooth. "Your dad made a mistake. But don't worry. If he fixes it, you'll go home." Emily's little hands clutched her sketchbook. She had begged to keep it, and surprisingly, he'd allowed it. "You're scary," she whispered. Daniel tilted his head. "Scary? No, I'm necessary. One day you'll understand. Your father was meant for more than small-town cases and birthday parties. He belongs in the big leagues. I'm just showing him the way." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "He belongs with me." For the first time, Daniel's smile faltered. A flicker of something, regret, crossed his face, but it vanished quickly. "Draw me something," he ordered. Something real. Emily's hand shook as she began to sketch, not him, but a house with light pouring from the windows. A family of 3 standing in the yard, holding hands. Daniel stared at it for a long moment, then left without a word. 3 nights later, John received a text, "Come alone, midnight, abandoned warehouse on 5th. The FBI wanted to prepare a sting, but John knew Cross too well. If he sees them, he'll kill her. Grace clung to him at the door, her voice breaking. "Please, John, don't let him win." John kissed her forehead. "I won't. One way or another, this ends tonight." The warehouse loomed like a skeleton against the night sky. Inside, shadows danced under flickering lights, and there she was. Emily, bound to a chair but alive, her eyes wide with hope and terror. "Daddy!" she cried. John rushed forward, but Cross stepped from the darkness, a gun in his hand. "Easy, Miller. One wrong move and she's gone." John froze, his chest heaving. "You've made your point. I'll sign whatever you want. Just let her go." Cross's smile was razor sharp. "I don't just want your signature. I want your surrender. I want to see you give up everything. Your morals, your pride, your precious family for ambition." John's voice thundered. "You're wrong. My ambition is my family," Cross sneered. "Then prove it." He aimed the gun at John. "Choose, Miller. Walk away and keep your life, or stay and die with her." Emily screamed. "Don't leave me, Daddy." Just then a sound cracked through the night. Tires screeching, shouts echoing. FBI agents stormed in, weapons raised. Cross fired wildly, dragging Emily toward him as a shield. John lunged forward with a roar, slamming into him. The gun clattered across the floor. The struggle was brutal, fists, knees, desperation. Cross was strong, fueled by madness, but John was fueled by something deeper. A father's love. He pinned Cross to the ground, his fist raised, ready to end it. But Emily's voice cut through the chaos. "Daddy, stop." Her small, trembling voice froze him. He looked down at the man who had terrorized them, then at his daughter's wide, pleading eyes. Slowly, John released his grip, letting the agents drag Cross away in handcuffs. Emily threw herself into his arms, sobbing. "I knew you'd come." John held her tight, tears streaming down his face. "I'll always come for you." Cross was taken into custody, charged with kidnapping, extortion, and a list of crimes too long to name. His empire crumbled, his ambition revealed as nothing but rot and ruin. The Millers, though shaken, returned home together. The scars would remain. Nightmares for Emily, guilt for John, fear for Grace, but their bond was stronger than ever. One evening, weeks later, Emily showed her parents a new drawing. It was of their house, glowing with light. Inside, the 3 of them sat at a dinner table, smiling. And above it, she had written in shaky but determined letters, "Home is stronger than storms." Grace wept. John kissed Emily's forehead, and together they knew the truth. They had faced storms, shadows, even monsters, but as long as they chose each other, they would never be lost again. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.